Welcome to the Sleeping Barber podcast.
Hey!
Welcome back to another episode of our Barber's Brief, marketing and business news in 20 minutes, and it's never in 20 minutes. So, I mean, that's what we try to do.
That's the fun part about it.
If you're a new listener, we use this forum to discuss things that has caught our eye in the last couple of weeks. We highlight our marketing moment or a case study, get into an audience Q&A, and of course, our favorite, Ad of the Week.
Yeah.
Mark, good morning.
Good morning, V.
How's it
It's a
going?
lovely Sunday morning. It's sunny. I got the smoker on. I'm super excited. I got a pork shoulder I'm cooking today. It's going to be great.
Nice. How
Yeah.
long has it been in the smoker for already?
4 hours.
Attaboy.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. The thermometer thing, I got to get that figured out because it's making me crazy. But outside of that, I'm sure it's going to be great.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So in the news, V, I
Think
think you got the first story here. What's going on? What's happening in the world?
Well, American Airlines just fired a marketing executive because their marketing strategy alienated corporate clients.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's a few things to unpack here just quickly. So, American Airlines, I think just last week, fired Chief Commercial Officer Vasu Raja, who marketing reports into, due to a critical review of its overarching or overall marketing strategy. They have this new idea. A lot of airlines are doing this as well, by the way, but I think American Airlines here is being called out. But the new idea of modern retailing approach, which its aim is to have a lot more people book direct through the websites. So in this case, American Airlines website for their travel needs, because they obviously want to curb the expenses to travel agents, to a lot of these other.
Oh, I see.
And by doing so, however, it's impacting corporate travel or some of those organizations that are using a lot of these travel agencies to basically book their travel, because they're prioritizing, obviously, even like points and things to that effect to those that book through their own portals.
First party data.
Right? Here it is.
Okay.
So the concerns over the shift of contributing or declining in overall revenue for the airline over recent quarters, I'm sure it's more than that. It can't just be that. But I think this is one thing that they've identified. Robert Issam has acknowledged that they need to modify the marketing strategy the strategy overall to ensure the customer is not negatively impacted. So it's it's looking at your entire consumer profile cohort, if you will, and understand where it is. Because I would argue your most profitable clients are the ones that are coming from corporate avenues than they are those that are flying or traveling leisurely. American Airlines has also halted any plans to limit their AA Advantage Miles program for certain bookings, acknowledge the need to address those customer concerns. So like I said, they were rewarding those that were booking directly to the website with more points versus, say, going through a travel agent or those corporate travel partners instead. Now, obviously, the industry experts they're viewing the shift in the strategy as overly aggressive, requiring a significant amount of time to actually right the ship. So I think this also highlights it's probably not just the marketing strategy here that's a fault, but it feels like marketing strategy maybe became a little bit of the scapegoat here as well. Not to say that it isn't the right thing to do in this case, to revisit your marketing strategy, but I think there's a lot more going on there as well.
I mean, it can almost see this playing out. Like we have to figure out first party data. Coming out of the pandemic, a lot more hybrid meetings, less corporate travel. I'm just making this up. I don't know this to be true, but then somebody comes in and go, first party data is a huge priority. We need to own the customer experience. And part of how we're going to deliver on that is through getting people to book and purchase through our website. Sounds reasonable. Like that, something like that could happen.
Yeah.
Then you think about like physical availability again. If you make stuff harder for people to do, then they're not going to buy from you.
No, they won't. They'll find other ways. Or they'll just become a preferred. If you'll remember this, anytime you would go through our online portals to book travel, you'd always have a preferred airline. a
Yeah.
company issued preferred airline, right?
Right.
So you would, for us here, like there's really two main carriers, Air Canada and WestJet. So of the two, you have an agreement with a specific airline.
Yeah.
Now, the way you're booking that is through this intermediary system. It's
Right.
not direct to the airline.
Right.
But why penalize those
Yeah.
segments?
Yeah. Yeah. It's fascinating.
Anyways, what'd
It's
you
a good
have?
story. Well, it's an interesting story. There's a guy named Paul Worthington who's got this great newsletter called Off Kilter that he does. I met him a while back. He's super smart guy, and he's always got some really interesting stuff. So his company's called Invention. I think that's how you say it. It's like Inven and then CION. I think that's how you pronounce the name.
That's how I would pronounce it.
Yeah. Anyway, so the newsletter is called Off Kilter, and so he wrote this article about. He called it "Oops, AI did it again." There's a whole bunch of stuff in there about blitzscaling and all that kind of stuff. But the main point I think he's talking about, which I thought was really interesting, is just there's lots of upside to AI. We talk about AI all the time, but there's a couple things that are worth considering, and we probably need to think more seriously about. So, as an example, sustainability. The amount of power that's required to forecasted for this is right now. The forecast power demand for AI alone is 7 times greater than this New York City's current annual electricity consumption. So in order to supply that, all these power companies are starting to figure out how to create solutions for that. So there's an expectation that natural gas is expected to supply about 60% of the power demand in the growth part for AI and data centers. Renewables is probably going to be 40%, but renewables is like a big, broad term. I think that includes nuclear. There's all kinds of stuff where Facebook, Google, and Amazon are investing in nuclear power plants to be able to sustain these data centers. We're not talking about just a little bit of power, right? This is massive amounts of power.
That's
so
insane.
Sustainability is a key thing. There's another one that he brings up about, he calls them shit posts, which I think is really awesome. But if you're scraping the internet, which is not always full of great information, you're scraping the internet to train databases. There's a lot that could happen that could be bad. So, for example, the subprime mortgage crisis, where we had the global financial collapse in 2008, I don't know, 10 years before then.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of stuff about how great these investments are and how important they are and how they're generating money and how ninja loans, no income, no kids, they have no income, no job, no assets. It makes sense. So you're taking all this stuff and you're putting into this AI and it's generating ideas about what is real and what is true. Even, I know we're not super political at all, but the Trump felony charges. You can imagine, if you scrape Fox, you're going to get one view. If you scrape CNN, you're going to get another view. Who's right? The AI is going to guess, you know what I mean? Or pick a side. I don't know.
I don't know.
So there's all kinds of things like that. And then there's this really interesting, speaking of airlines, really interesting liability case that came up. Air Canada replaced customer service agents with an AI chatbot. In one exchange, a customer was asking this chatbot about bereavement fares. So somebody in the family died or a friend died or something like that. I don't know exactly all the circumstances. But then the AI chatbot hallucinated a corporate policy statement.
What?
And said, here's what happens in the scenario with bereavement. So the person took that as fact because they got it from the AI chatbot.
Yeah.
Submitted their expenses to Air Canada. Air Canada denied them. Then that person sued them in a civil court.
And won, probably.
And won. Air Canada, which is kind of crazy. Part of Air Canada's defense was that the chatbot was a separate legal entity that was responsible for its own actions.
My goodness.
Can you imagine they won? The court didn't agree and they lost the battle. But it was there's all kinds of stuff with AI that
I'm not associated with that. You know, is that what you're saying?
It's its own thing. It's its own
thing,
person.
Sorry.
Anyway,
oh my goodness.
Yeah, so there's lots of anyway, I just thought it was a really interesting article and worth thinking about. And I always look at AI going, there's lots of upside, and there is, but it's also there's some real downsides that we have to kind of think about.
I completely agree, especially with the liability risk element. I think there was in another kind of unrelated case with Air Canada again, where I think a consumer went to the chatbot, not their own chatbot. I think they just used generative AI, and they asked about like I think their baggage, lost baggage, I think policies.
Mm-hmm.
And what ended up happening, whatever the information that they got, it was an old indexed version of what their baggage policy was.
Mm.
And it's not what's current,
Hmm.
but they took it again to Air Canada, tried to find Air Canada, denied them.
Yeah.
The individual later sued, won. And it just puts so much pressure on making sure that the information that's out there, old index pages,
Totally.
make sure you're cleaning that. The SEO side of this
This is
is
that
gonna
shitpost thing. Like,
holy smokes, yeah,
yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
And it's gonna become a big issue.
Like the internet is full of like graveyard content
Oh, yeah.
that has no relevance to anybody anymore. And it's like, it's also absorbing that stuff.
Exactly.
What do you got?
Okay, just quickly here. So I thought this was really interesting because it's not something I would typically put here as like in the news, but it was an interesting read around how Amazon created a winning streaming formula based on airport books for dads.
What?
Yeah,
Come
right?
again.
Yeah. So Amazon Prime is producing a series of shows based on popular books that are typically associated with airport books for dads. So
Okay.
books that men like to read.
Okay.
So the streaming service now hosts like, Bosch, Jack Ryan, The Terminal List, Reacher,
Oh, yeah.
and the James Patterson Cross. And these shows are featured really dominant masculine protagonists from detective or military backgrounds that really kind of go and play their own rules. So it seems like there's an affinity to this
Yeah.
type of genre or character to airport dads, I guess.
Yeah. I've watched 3 out of 4 of those.
See,
Yeah.
it's a thing. And what's awesome about this, it actually seems to be really successful because I don't know about you, but like Amazon Prime they went and bought the MGM library.
Yeah.
But the way that they're approaching like a lot of their content right now is really likely more around the demographic that they're trying to target, which I think this is where the story lies, is they identified a niche potentially, and it's like the popular books that dads are reading, or airport dads. I don't know if it's why it's airport dads versus dads. It's maybe just because you have
who
time
knows?
in the airport and you're just like walking by, you're like, oh, what's on the
Guilty
list?
pleasures.
Yeah. And, the appeal lies in a familiar, uncomplicated, and predictable nature of these shows. So I think for us as men or dads, it's just ways for us to turn our brains off even more often than maybe we do. Or, we're just that sense of vicarious thrill through an old school sensibility.
Totally.
Anyways, shows like they're really doubling down on this strategy as well, because you're seeing a lot of these shows getting extended, multiple seasons and things to that effect. So it seems to be working. And yeah, I just thought that was just an interesting take on how they approach the segmentation and then their content based on how men airport dads are engaging with their content. I thought it was good.
That's super interesting. Also interesting, like I watched a bunch of those shows now, and I've got a few subscriptions to the different platforms. How is it that these these platforms are now starting to turn into just regular TV from like 10,
right?
You know what I mean? Like they all got ads now. You got programming.
Oh man,
like the Crave version that I subscribe to, the basic one, has like you can just tune in at whatever 9 and watch a show that's already streaming.
Yeah.
I'm like, isn't this what we had before?
Oh man, we've come full circle there as well.
Yeah, it's crazy.
All right, last one. What you got?
Well, speaking of segmentation, this was an interesting story. So, P&G's Chief Brand Officer Mark Pritchard talking about inclusivity as a way to grow brands and as a growth strategy, which I thought was super interesting. His take on, and I mean, grain of salt, I would say, not grain of salt, in context of how big P&G is. I think this matters for them, but I think it's a good idea anyway, just to listen to for any brand. So his philosophy is the best way for a company to grow is to expand markets by serving everyone. And that in turn expands the market. If normally you'd think about, well, the market is X big, we're going to try and steal share from these competitors through differentiation or whatever the thing is. which is fine, but then it's a zero-sum game. So if you're taking one away from this customer or from this competitor,
yeah.
you're not increasing the size of the pie. You're just trying to steal some of the pie.
Yeah.
But then in turn, they're going to go back and look at you and go, well, you stole that one from me. I'm going to steal some of these from you. And so like this, you're not really making the pie bigger. So Mark's perspective is if you focus on creativity and innovation to bring in more users, get them to use more or even pay higher prices, then it's everybody wins. And you're then also creating this capability of creating and innovating even more. And it's like this virtuous circle. So they have this framework called the 4 R's. So reach, representation, relevance, and resonance that they use as a tool to help them model out how they go to market for things.
Okay.
And so here's an idea around the segmentation. They go, okay, 100% of the market is our target audience, which is kind of refreshing.
That is, yeah.
At the same time that they understand there's different types of people and they have different needs. So there's this one example of in the beauty category. So they have this, so skincare cleaning products are a big category, or skincare is a big category, and products for cleaning skincare skin is important. They had this insight that many cleansers were drying the skin of Black consumers. After having made that insight, they developed a product under the Olay brand that met this need by creating a dissolving cleansing square that they called Olay Melts.
Okay.
Which then was to serve that specific need. And it in turn ended up becoming a really popular product for tons and tons of people. So even though it was meant for one group of a segment, it ended up becoming really popular for a whole bunch of people on the planet.
Which speaks again to the broad nature of the targeting and the reach side.
Yeah. And so like needs-based segmentation is actually, we talked to...
I was just going to say.
Yeah, I'm drawing blank on his name now. Tony Ulrich, which was really interesting because we get so fixated on like who this person is, like I don't know, Sarah, the accountant who does this, and this, and not on the needs so much. Like there's a lot of people with certain needs that are unmet, and if you can serve them, that might actually be a more effective way. And I think that's kind of what P&G is doing.
Yep, I love that. That's such a great example.
You got a case study.
I do got a case study, and it's one that I think we've peripherally really kind of heard about. Everyone's somewhat aware, but I did some digging. Actually, I watched Mark Ritson's FE's. It's such a great resource. I gotta admit.
They're like, there's 10 of them or 9 of them or something. They're awesome.
Yeah. They're really well done. But it comes around the notion of the power of positioning, the Apple turnaround, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to highlight this one because I think there's a few things that are going on here that can still be very, very relevant in the way we approach a lot of our brands, a lot of the orgs and everything that we represent. Just quickly going back into the Wayback Machine. Back in 1997.
Can we make that a segment?
The Wayback Machine.
Please, I really want to make that a segment somehow. But we need that clip. We need that clip of audio.
We'll just timestamp it. We'll know.
Okay. Yeah.
So back in 97, I was just coming out of high school. Sorry, everyone, do the math. It's all good. Apple was in big trouble. They had lost over $800 million. You have to understand, at that time, $800 million is kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
$800 million today.
Well, anytime. Yeah.
But even then, was even a bigger deal than maybe what it is today. They had low market penetration, and their market capitalization was only roughly, I think, $2 billion. Again, still a very large org. I'm not trying to say like they were small or anything, but they weren't doing well. Michael Dell, the CEO at the time, when asked on how he planned to fix the organization, he was just planning to shut it down and give money back to shareholders. So, I mean, if you remember at that time as well, like every news outlet would be constantly talking about Apple's not in good state, filing for bankruptcy, et cetera, et cetera. Steve Jobs returned to refocus Apple, and then there was a lot of anticipation on what he could do next. And this would have been his second tour with the organization. In August of the same year, he addressed the future of the company in Macworld in 1997. So what did he do there? Well, he did a few things. So the first, he really kind of outlined where the new direction of the company was going. It really was around the new positioning of the org, and they identified three core, what they called brand tenets for them. The one was simplicity, the second was creativity, and the third was humanity. Now, with these three tenets in place, they briefed Shayad and Day, and I think TWA was a part of that, which actually led to the famous Think Different campaign.
Oh yeah.
Right. And because of those three things, really ushered in this new era for Apple. So why was that so impactful? Well, the Think Different campaign was a very simple message. It's like, for all the contrarians out there, for all those that do things differently or challenge this quote, it was easy for people to understand. So the message was simple. It was all about creativity. So if you think about the people that they profiled, it was like being creative in their own in their own spaces, in their own industries and whatnot. But more importantly, it actually celebrated humanity at its core, this idea of evolution and keep moving forward. Due to this its simplicity, it actually worked across, from an executional perspective, across a lot of different mediums very easily. So at the time, you think like print, TV, out of home. I don't think they had done it. I didn't find any research suggest that they even did radio, but the creative executions became endless because they were highlighting all these different figureheads. But what it did, it actually bought them time, and it bought them time to start redefining and rethinking their products. Q 2003, not 2023, 2003, and they released the iPod. Now, the iPod itself was an important part in the evolution of the company, because it ushered in a totally different consumer segment that really started essentially, like, I have to admit, like, my first Apple product was an iPod, an iPod Mini. And it was the first time I ever thought of Apple in that way. And because of that, they also they worked with Shayad and Dave for the campaign. If you recall, it was the Silhouettes campaign that they launched, which at the time was just something so refreshing.
Yeah, the colorful background, the white earbuds.
Exactly. And again, you go back down to those three tenets: simplicity, creativity, and humanity. It just really rang true through that as well. Now, obviously, there's a lot more that transcended, but I think the most important thing here is to highlight the fact that by identifying those brand positioning tenets, they were able to essentially usher the company into a new era. Of course, it's not just that, it's the consistency that they were able to apply against it. Their product and innovation roadmaps probably had a big part of the continued, what's it called, progress of the organization. When you think about the iPod, the Apple, the iPhone came in 2007, if I'm not mistaken. They did do you remember the Get the Mac is Born, the campaign where they created an enemy in Microsoft, and they highlighted Apple's
Mac versus PC.
Exactly. And again, even that campaign had those three tenets were present. Like, it was simple, it was creative, and at the end of the day, it really kind of repositioned how Microsoft was really more complex than anything. So just wrapping up here, simple positioning always beats complex positioning, and it's important to be clear and consistent with your brand positioning. Differentiation is possible through positioning because it can also help with price volatility that helps you drive profits at the end, or pricing power, as we like to call. So chapeau, Apple. Great summary, Mark Ritson. I love your stuff there. But I think it just doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be complicated. And so I think sometimes we get lost in that a little bit.
Yeah, I think the hard work is getting to the point of simplicity. Like,
I agree.
I remember there was, I'm pretty sure there's a YouTube video of Steve Jobs when he's releasing that video to a group of people, like I don't know if it's an investor group.
Oh, right.
Or, like, there's a recording of him talking about that.
Yeah.
And there's this clip that's often cut out, which is, here's him introducing the brand. But there are other clips where it's got more of the interview being recorded, or more of his like presentation being recorded. And so earlier on in that, I remember him speaking, if it's the same one I'm thinking of, him speaking about, it's been really busy, now that he's back, it's been really busy. We've been doing lots of work. and he's like, they cut, I think it was something like 70% of their product line.
Wow.
It was huge. And so because it was like pulling them apart to have to think about
all the different
all
things.
the stuff that they were making, and like, 8 different printers and 15 different computers, and like,
Yeah.
and I think it was in one of those, somebody had asked him to recommend a laptop for him, or a computer from their portfolio. He's like, I don't even know what to recommend.
Yeah.
Because there's so many of them.
Yeah.
So it was like, I think what's amazing about that, and you kind of spoke about it, is that the simplicity, creativity, and humanity also became operational. It wasn't just a campaign for them.
It's a good point. Yeah.
Like everything, it was kind of like the promise of the customer stuff, really, when you think about it. It's so much of that was baked into how they organize and resource their teams and their research R&D departments and their production and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
It's a great case study.
And what are they like worth like $3 trillion or something crazy now?
Huge, ridiculous numbers. I don't even know. Like, it's hard to even fathom how big these companies are.
I mean, the fact that we're highlighting them, but I think it just shows like there's a point where you can still make fundamental changes to how you operate, how you think.
Yeah.
If you just kind of go back to some key principles. And I think for Apple, it was just kind of, who are they as a brand? And they, again, identified those 3 tenets, and they just went from there.
Yeah, totally. I got a Q&A for you, V. It's a spin-off from the conversation we had with Esther. So we were joking about the go viral button. So imagine you do have a thing that goes viral, whatever that means to you.
Okay.
Do you, like, and that happens once, let's say, do you then go, that worked really well, I'm going to cut my brand budget, or I'm going to decrease my investments in like TV or in like campaign, like big tent creative.
Okay.
Because I got this thing that's performing. Like, it just went really, we'll just do more of that. We'll do more of the viral stuff.
So how do you define performance, though?
Well, I guess this is the question now.
Okay. So we're getting into it. Okay.
Well, like what do you do? Like, because I mean, it happens that you get good results out of like cheap and cheerful type of campaigns.
Didn't we recently, I want to say like, it must have been a couple of months ago, there was a CMO that was fired, even though they had Snoop Dogg.
Oh, yeah. Solo stoves.
Solo stoves.
Yeah.
So how'd that work out for
them? They went smokeless. Yeah. Right. Snoop was, that was actually a great one.
But short answer, I think, for me is no, you do not stop your investments everywhere else just because you had some piece of content gain some level of virality, or
that's a great example. The solo stove one. You're so right about that. Yeah.
That was like, it was what you would consider probably one of the most, I guess, in recent times, really successful from like getting a lot of people excited about a product. Had a level of viral in it. But anyways, I think for your question is like, no, please don't stop investing in your brand. Maybe like you likely have some sort of marketing calendar that you're staying close to. I think those things help add to building mental availability about your product or your company or your service. I think you should be adding fuel to that fire than you would, it's by way of campaigns. It could be by a promotion. It could be something else. Yeah, I would not take money away just because you had a piece of content that went viral and you just wanted to boost that potentially. No, I would say no.
Yeah, it's an interesting take. It's almost like an extension of the question around performance marketing in general. Like, I'm getting all these numbers that are showing that we're doing great. Let's do more of that. Right? Like, I think, and I get the desire. Like, if you have something that's doing well, quote unquote, you want to be able to showcase that and say, how well it did. But then there's the other side, which is, thinking about category entry points. It's not necessarily about general brand awareness. Like, we talked about that case study of Bailey's. Like, they had really high general awareness, but people weren't thinking of them in buying situations. So the viral part, like you and I were part of a bunch of these things, these campaigns, or we try to manufacture viral campaigns, and you got to piggyback off of things that are trending.
Totally.
Like it's part of like the surfing a wave kind of idea.
Yeah.
Where there's a swell coming in of things that are trending, and you're trying to piggyback off some of those, leverage that. But it's not necessarily, those waves aren't necessarily the category entry points that people think of when they're buying a product in your category. It's just like a popularity thing.
Totally.
So if you were tracking your brand awareness and your brand recall in against those category entry points, it may be that none of these performance metrics are actually meaningfully changing any of those or improving any of those.
I love your analogy on like riding a wave, because I think that's what I think you can have a strategy on how your organic social marketing is trying to maintain or create some level of affinity to current news, events, things to that effect. Like I think that can be part of a strategy, but it can't be your only strategy.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought it was an interesting question because, for lots of reasons, but I think we covered it. Thanks.
Yeah. No problem, buddy. That's what I'm here for.
I have the ad of the week, which is coming up, V. So let's
go. This one I like.
Ad of the week.
Go.
This one is cool. Heinz ketchup. Heinz has been doing some. I'm a huge fan of Heinz ketchup, by the way. I love Heinz ketchup. Anyway, so they've been doing some interesting work for the last little bit quietly. One of the things they had noticed is that this came from Turkey, I believe. One of their like the brand over there was, and it's probably true everywhere. You have these bottles with Heinz ketchup in it, like the squeezable bottles, let's say, and people would refill them with things that weren't Heinz ketchup, even though the logo on the front was Heinz ketchup. Like you're at a restaurant and they're just getting whatever ketchup and they're refilling it. So one of the things that Heinz did try and like counterpunch on this counterfeiting going on was they put around their logo, they put a red border that was the color Pantone of the ketchup. So then they ran a campaign against it saying, hey, by the way, if the color doesn't match, it's not Heinz.
I love that.
It's really clever. It's so clever. Because now they're using red, which is part of their distinctive asset, and putting it on the bottle so that you can match what's in the bottle with what's on the bottle. It's so clever. I thought it was really good. And they had some really great results with it. And overall, Heinz has done some really amazing things. Actually, we'll probably put a case study of them in soon.
Yeah, we should.
Because they've done some really amazing things. And that's one of the things they've done to get the recognition that and the effectiveness awards they've been winning.
It's like, honestly, such a great example. That's why I was really excited for you to highlight this one. Of just being very purposeful. Again, you don't need AI. You don't need fancy MarTech, ad tech to do or pull something like this off. This is very simple.
Yeah.
Which can have a lot of reach in terms of like the how you bring it to life from a campaign perspective. But like, I love it. It's so good. So good.
Yeah. So we got who coming up next, V?
Esther Benzie.
Yes. Which we kind of talked about before. Yeah.
We already did, but I'm really excited to air this episode. I think you and I, before we jumped on, it was one of those conversations that was just so refreshing, somewhat reflective on collective careers and Esther's career, working for P&G, CIBC, really navigating some of these marketing conundrums that we're constantly faced with, and just kind of doing a retrospect that I thought was just fantastic.
Yeah, it was great. I love that word refreshing that you used, because it was really refreshing. It was so fun. Yeah,
it was great.
Okay, buddy. Well, this is the end.
This is the end.
Not of us, but just of this podcast, this episode.
This episode. And look, it's only 36 minutes. We did it, man. That's not too bad.
Yeah, we did it. We got really close to 20. Almost less than double. Almost. Yeah. Anyway, I got to go hit my smoker up and see how my pork shoulder's doing.
All right, man. You go do you, and everyone else, let's go chase profitability.
Oh, what a segue. So good. All right, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Have a good one.
Ciao.